Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for being here. We are at Miller's Point. I have made videos around here before, so definitely check those out if you want more detail. But today is a walk for you guys to do as a weekend or even a weekday activity. It is for the history buffs, the food lovers, and the travelers. And honestly, it is just a really nice walk to watch with some great views. It is basically a pub crawl. But let's get this straight. I am not saying you have to do that. Look, these places have history, atmosphere, and great food, and plus, walking is healthy, right? Looks like I'm here early, and they are just setting up, but just imagine sitting out here with this view. Our first port of call is here. Hotel Palisade, built back in 1915. You have to remember that in the early 1900s, the bubonic plague hit Sydney. The government actually knocked down a lot of the old houses here to clean the place up, and they rebuilt this area for the maritime workers. This hotel was built specifically for the wharfies. It was also the last drinks on home soil for many of the Anzacs in World War I. The hotel was eventually refurbished in 2015, and it has been a local favourite ever since. Now, if you are feeling hungry, they have got two options here. Downstairs in the public house, it is your classic honest pub feed. You can grab a Wagyu sirloin steak or some beer-battered barramundi and chips. But if you head upstairs to Henry Dean, that is where things get a bit fancy. They do these great shared plates like seared prawn tails with harissa or raw hiramasa kingfish. And if you want to stay the night, they actually have 8 boutique rooms upstairs. They're all themed with these cool hand-painted maritime murals. One person on Google recently said the room was quirky and different with way more character than your standard hotel chain, and the views from the balconies are just spectacular. It's a great spot to wake up and see the Harbour Bridge right outside your window. Our next port of call is right here on the corner of Kent Street. This is the Lord Nelson Brewery Hotel. Now, this building is a real icon because it is Sydney's oldest continuously licensed hotel, dating all the way back to 1841. It was actually a private house first built in the 1830s. Because it was made of such solid sandstone, it was one of the few buildings to survive the mass demolitions after the plague in 1900. It is often called the pious sister of the local pubs because it has always been a bit more respectable than the rougher ones down by the water. If you're a beer fan, you're in the right place. They brew their own award-winning ales right inside these walls. You have to try the 3 Sheets Pale Ale or the Old Admiral. For food, they are famous for their beef and Guinness pie. One person on Google said it is like stepping back into the 1840s with no loud music or pokies, just good beer and a fireplace. They also have accommodation upstairs with 9 double rooms that have been restored to keep that historic feel. It is the perfect spot if you want to stay somewhere with a bit of soul. Sorry about that sun flaring into the camera, guys. We get these incredibly clear skies in Sydney, and with the sun at this angle, it is just hitting the lens perfectly. But hey, I guess you can't complain about a beautiful day for a walk, even if the sun is trying its best to blind us for a second. Up on the right, up the hill, is Observation Hill. It's a bit of a climb, but the view from the top is killer. Back in the day, that was the spot for the military barracks and Fort Phillip. You got to imagine all the soldiers hanging out up there, keeping an eye on the town while the wharfies were busy down at the docks. Just take a look at these houses along Argyle Place. This street is so famous, it actually has its own Wikipedia page. It was meant to be Sydney's version of a fancy London square back in the day. Most of these sandstone terraces have been here since the 1830s and 1840s. There is a real mix here from simple cottages built by a publican named William Cole to much grander townhouses. If you look closely at one of the larger ones, you can still see the name Osborne House and the year 1845 carved right into the stone. Up ahead is the Garrison Church. Its real name is Holy Trinity, but everyone calls it the Garrison because it was the first official military church in Australia. It was built back in the 1840s for the soldiers we were talking about earlier, the ones stationed up on Observation Hill. If you look at the architecture, it's got that beautiful old Gothic style. What's really cool is that it was actually built using sandstone quarried right here in the area. You've got to imagine this place on a Sunday morning 180 years ago, packed with red-coated soldiers in their full uniform. It stood through everything from the plague to the building of the bridge, and it's still a huge part of the community today. As we keep heading east and walk down the hill on our left, you'll see the Hero of Waterloo. Now, if the Lord Nelson is the pious sister, then this place is definitely the wild one. It was built in 1843 by convicts, and you can still see the chisel marks in the sandstone walls today. This is the place with the legendary stories of the secret tunnels. Word is there was a trapdoor under one of the bar stools. If you had one too many, you might find yourself dropped into the cellar and shackled up before being dragged through a tunnel to the harbour. You'd wake up the next morning on a ship headed for the middle of the ocean. They still have the old shackles in the basement to prove it, but the history isn't just in the basement. There's a tragic story about a former landlady named Anne Kirkman. In 1849, her husband apparently pushed her down the stairs, and she haunts the place to this day. People say you can still hear her playing classical music on the piano late at night. If you're looking for a feed, they've got some serious options here. You can't go past the lamb shank bourguignon or the slow-cooked beef Wellington. And if you're after something lighter, the salt and pepper squid is always a winner. One person on Google said the lamb shank was perfectly cooked and the whole place feels like stepping back in time. They have accommodation too if you're brave enough to spend a night in Australia's most haunted pub. Man, imagine waking up on a ship in the middle of the ocean after just one too many at the bar. Pretty wild stuff. Sorry guys, but it is that time. If you're enjoying the stroll so far, could you hit that like button for me? It really helps the channel out and it helps get these videos out to other people who might want to explore these hidden corners of Sydney. And if you really want to support what I do, I have got a link to my Buy Me a Coffee in the description. It is basically like buying me a virtual beer, but without the risk of getting shanghaied through a trapdoor. Anyway, let's keep going. We've still got some big hitters to see. As we're walking down Lower Fort Street, just take a look at the houses. This whole stretch is like a living museum, and it's actually considered the most historic street in Sydney. You've got grand mansions from the 1820s mixed in with massive Victorian terraces from the 1880s. Back then, this was the place to be for wealthy merchants who wanted to keep an eye on their ships in the harbour. It's pretty wild that these places survived the plague and the building of the bridge, but I'm glad they did because they look incredible. Now we're right under the shadow of the bridge at the Harbour View Hotel. This spot has a pretty crazy story. The original pub from 1843 actually stood right where those massive granite pylons are now. They had to knock it down to build the bridge. So they just rebuilt the whole hotel right here on this corner in 1922. If you're stopping in for a feed, the surf and turf is the big hitter here, with a high quality rump steak and jumbo prawns. They also do some great pub classics like chicken schnitzel and beer battered fish and chips. One person on Google said the upstairs deck has fabulous views of the bridge climbers, and it's a great spot to just sit and watch the cruise ships leave the quay. They've also got accommodation upstairs with rooms that have that real wow factor because of the bridge views. It is a bit of a hidden gem tucked away up here, but it's easily one of the best spots for a drink in the city. Walking under the bridge here, you really get a sense of why it is the soul of Sydney. It is more than just a way to get across the harbour. It is this massive, iconic piece of our identity that everyone around the world recognises. Standing right here under the steel, you feel how big and permanent it is compared to everything else. It really is the anchor that holds the whole city together. Now, just as we're passing by here, check out this little building. It is actually a heritage-listed toilet block from the early 1900s. I reckon it is probably the most famous place in Sydney to spend a penny. Now that we're out from under the bridge, we're heading straight for a bit of Irish luck. This is the Mercantile Hotel, and it's officially Australia's oldest Irish pub. It was built in 1915, the same year as the Palisade, as part of that massive post-plague cleanup we talked about earlier. If you love live music, this is your spot. You can almost always hear a fiddle or a guitar coming from inside. It's got that classic wooden bar and a real community feel that's hard to find in the middle of a big city. For a feed, you can't go past the traditional Irish stew or their famous Guinness pot pie. They even do a proper Irish breakfast if you're here early enough. One person on Google said the atmosphere is unmatched and it's the best place in Sydney for a pint of the black stuff and a bit of a yarn. They also have rooms upstairs if you want to stay right in the thick of the action in the rocks. Hang on. Sorry guys. The camera's starting to play up a bit on me here. Just hold in there. We're nearly at the end. I think it's just getting as tired as my legs are. It's all good though. We've only got 2 more to go and I am not letting a bit of tech trouble stop us now. Stick with me. Just look at the atmosphere around here now. You can really feel the energy picking up as we get deeper into the heart of the area. I love how you've got these massive modern office towers peeking over the top of 200-year-old sandstone. It is such a unique contrast. We're just about to duck up one of my favourite little spots, Playfair Street, where the history really starts to close in on you. Back in the early days, this was one of the roughest neighbourhoods in the world. It was a place for convicts, sailors, and gangs. People actually used to be terrified of coming into the rocks. It's crazy to think that in the 1970s, the government actually wanted to knock all of this down and build high-rise office towers. But the local community and the unions fought back to save it. Now it's obviously become this iconic tourist spot. You've got these beautiful old sandstone buildings that used to be crowded tenements, but now they're filled with art galleries, cafes, and markets. It has definitely found its second life. It's gone from being a place people avoided to the place everyone wants to visit when they come to Sydney. Walking through here, you've got to remember that this entire area was basically built by convicts for convicts. When the first fleet arrived, this was the rugged sandstone edge of the harbour where they were all dumped. They literally had to hand carve these streets and stairs right out of the rock, which is why the area got its name. Back then, it was a maze of tiny laneways and crowded huts. It was a pretty brutal place to live, but it's the foundation of everything we see today. It's wild to think that the very same sandstone you're looking at in these walls was probably hauled up from the harbour by men in chains. Now, we're just walking past it on our way to get a cold beer. Times have definitely changed. As we head down this little lane, you're standing in a place named after a real local hero. This is Jack Mundy Lane. Back in the 1970s, the government actually wanted to bulldoze everything we've walked past today and turn it into high-rise office towers. Right here on the corner of Argyle and George Street is the Orient Hotel. This beautiful sandstone landmark has been a staple of the Rock since 1844. It was actually built on the site of the First Fleet Surgeon's house. So the history here goes right back to the very beginning. If you're after a feed, they've got a massive menu. You can't go wrong with the barramundi. Or if you want something a bit different, they do a great kangaroo salad with native spices. One person on Google said it is a fabulous pub right in the oldest part of Australia with a great atmosphere and live music nearly every day of the week. Upstairs, they've got a spot called Mrs. Jones, named after an infamous former landlady, and they even have rooms if you want to stay right on this famous corner. We are so close to the finish line now. Just one more to go. Just look at all this street dining. It's got that real European vibe right in the middle of our oldest streets. You can just sit back, do some people watching and soak in all that sandstone around you. It's a world away from the rough days of the past, and honestly, you can't beat it for a long lunch on a sunny afternoon. And just up here, we've finally made it to the end of our walk. This is the Fortune of War. Now, this is the heavy hitter. It was first licensed in 1828 by an ex-convict named Samuel Terry, which officially makes it the oldest pub in Sydney. For over 190 years, this has been the first and last port of call for sailors and soldiers coming and going from Australia. It's got so much history packed into such a small space. When you walk in, it still feels like an old school traditional pub with those beautiful wooden walls and the memorabilia everywhere. If you're stopping for a bite, they do a legendary chicken parmigiana or a classic Aussie burger. And if you're after a drink, they've got a massive selection of craft beers on tap. One person on Google said it's an absolute must visit for the history alone, but the friendly staff and the cold beer make it even better. They also have accommodation upstairs, the Fortune of War Hotel, with some really charming rooms if you want to stay in the most historic pub in the country. Well, that's the walk. Hope you enjoyed the history and the views. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more. Thanks for walking with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.